Today we're going to be checking out 6 Christmas horror stories. Really quickly, just wanted to say Merry Christmas to all and Happy Holidays. Hopefully you guys got everything and anything you wanted for Christmas today. All of that being said, let's jump into the Christmas special. Let's see what's cracking. What's going on?
Santa is a game that usually gets played in a classroom or, in my case, an office.
Yes, it happens.
I'm sure you're well aware of what it is, but in case you're not, I'll give you the quick version.
Talk to me.
Everyone is assigned a random coworker to secretly give a gift to.
Yep.
Usually there's something like a price cap around $15 or so.
Hopefully you get them something good.
It's usually a pretty interesting turn of events as we get to learn a thing or two about coworkers as you start digging up on what their interests are and what have you. 9 times out of 10, you just find out cute things like big angry looking guy has a secret passion for growing flowers. General stuff like that.
Fair enough.
We always look forward to Secret Santa, as we had an almost family-like community here where we were all encouraged to spend as much time as possible together.
That's good.
The tidbits of gossip were always playful and fun. This was not one of those times.
Okay.
This time around, I was the unfortunate soul who was gifted upon by the weird IT guy.
Fair
Let's
enough.
call him Squid.
He does look weird.
Squid was a guy with no social skills whatsoever, however, at the same time, an ingenious worker in his craft, or so they told me. I don't know 2 things about anything that's tech-related outside of spreadsheets, email, and Amazon, if you could even call it that. A little background real quick. I'm a secret collector of these weird big-headed toys called Funko Pops. Not just any particular type either, but specifically Game of Thrones types.
Game of Thrones is a
I
great
had
show.
this unhealthy obsession with that show, and for what started out as a
10 out of
joke
10.
where I bought a Jon Snow toy, quickly spiraled out of control, resulting in me owning almost all of them.
Great show.
You should see the shelf in my room. Jaime Lannister, the Hound, Snow, Giant's Bane, the Night King, Littlefinger, Tyrion, Dany, Ned, Stannis, you name it. I had them all.
Fair enough.
However, there was this one character that I could never find, and that was a specific version of Tyrion. The one where he's in the battle armor with a scar across his face.
Okay.
You know, like in Season 2's Blackwater episode.
Yep.
Point is, not everyone gets the whole collection thing, and Funkos are, well, different than what everyone else was expecting.
I feel like a lot of people collect
Nobody at
those,
work
though.
knew, and I intended to keep it that way.
I really do.
On my way home, between the time of assigning the Secret Santas and the day we exchanged, I ran into Squid at a hobby store. It looked like he was expecting to see me there. Or maybe that was just because he was weird and always looks that way.
Okay.
Either way, I have no clue. I didn't expect to see him there.
Why is he
and try to turn and
hyperventilating?
leave. Me being an idiot, I looked back as I cleared the door and accidentally made direct eye contact with him. He got really nervous and looked down at the ground. I wasn't sure what to do, so instead I just left.
Bro, this
I
is
would
weird.
talk to him next time I saw him and make up an excuse.
This guy's weird, bro.
I wouldn't bring this up, but the thing is, it plays a factor in the day we exchanged. Turns out he got me exactly the Funko doll I was looking for. My boy Tyrion with his battle scar. Specifically the one I never told anyone at work I wanted. How he knew just made those bells in my head explode.
Oh no.
Everyone had a good laugh, and Squid looked so nervous, almost pale, when he gave it to me. When I asked him how he knew, he said it was just a guess, seeing as we ran into each other at the store by chance. When I got home, I put the doll in the corner of the room and never took it out of the bag.
Oh no.
It just seemed so creepy to me that he knew to get me specifically that one doll.
He knew.
I couldn't even add it to the collection.
He was looking
I
through your
almost threw it
window.
away, but instead I just forgot about it for the next couple of weeks. Squid continued to ask me about it, specifically what I thought about it and if I
There's
set
a
it up
camera
yet.
in it. There's a
I kept
camera.
telling him I didn't.
There's a
and
camera.
He just kept getting more annoyed about it. He's been watching me more and more these days. I was thinking about complaining to HR, but everyone knew that Squid was like this homeschooled weirdo. Uncomfortable, but accepted regardless as per the nature of the place we worked.
Oh no, bro.
So one day he asked me, and I decided just to lie and say yes. I stood the thing up in my TV room. Poor Squid looked beyond skeptical, and beyond that, even more annoyed, like he could just see through it. Turns out, Squid can tell when I lie.
He wanted it in the
knows?
bedroom.
Either way, it was getting unbearable. So I get home, and the first thing I do is take it out of the bag and throw it away. As I do, I notice the factory seal on the box was torn open. Well, sort of. That wouldn't bother me so much, but it had masking tape over it as if to try to hide the fact. Big deal. Maybe someone got caught trying to take it out of the box and they just refurbished it.
No.
Either way, I took it out of the box to look at it closely. Part of me wanted to know if the creep slipped a note inside, but there was nothing but the usual
He
stuff.
replaced the eyes with
I
camera.
noticed two things out of the gate. One was that the doll was heavier than usual. Like I said earlier, I've been collecting these things for quite some time, so I should know. The other was that the head had a crack in it. I take a closer look and notice that the crack actually wraps around the entire head.
Yep.
I prod at it for a second and notice that it's actually a seam from when it was split open.
Camera.
The head came apart very easily, and as it did, the small thing fell out of it.
Thank you.
It looked like a plug or something, but
Creeper.
then I realized the plug had a small glass over the receiving part. I take a closer look and see this tiny red light. Then it hits me. This is a camera. Some kind of DIY thing, like it was homemade. As I make it to throw it across the room,
Weirdo.
the light shuts off. Squid realized I found him out. I wrapped it in 3 plastic bags, then put it into a box.
Wow.
The thought of having it in my house made my stomach turn, but I needed to show it to HR. When I showed up to work the next day, Squid was gone. Turns out he left a last-second call saying that he was quitting, effective immediately. Turns out he wiped his entire hard drive before he took off sometime the prior night. The word got out that Squid was trying to spy on me, and everyone was pretty cool about it.
Weirdo.
Mostly on account of them saying things like, I knew it. I mean, let's face it, we all did. So here's the part that really messes with me.
You just ignored it.
It turns out that the main reason Squid was able to learn so much about me was the fact that I was foolish enough to leave my Google account logged into the work computer. From there, it was easy enough task for Squid to break into my account and learn all my personal information. Think about it. My entire phone was linked to Google. That thing has me on GPS, granting him the ability to stalk and keep track of me just 2 rooms away. No wonder he found out about the freaking doll. He had almost everything, but bad for him, I didn't own a webcam or anything like that for him to hack. He just needed to see me at night when I was private and vulnerable. I deleted all my accounts, changed my numbers, got rid of everything that gave him access to my personal information. I changed bank accounts, cut my credit and debit cards, completely uplifted my digital footprint.
Wow.
It just scares me because I just don't know how much information is out there about me, how far it goes. In the end, the police caught him and he was brought up on stalker charges of some sort.
As he
He
should.
pled guilty to infiltrating my life. He told them he wanted to learn the layout of my house.
Strapped up.
Do I really need to spell it out for you any further?
No. I understand.
Judge me if you want. But please, for the love of God, be careful when you share your personal information, especially when it comes to work computers. You just don't know who is watching.
I feel like that's slightly true, and the other half is just don't trust weirdos. Like, you can tell when someone is just weird and when someone is a weirdo. Like, he's weird and he's a weirdo. Like, some people could just be weird and just be awkwardly weird. This guy is a weirdo. You know what I'm saying? There's a big difference between weird and weirdo. At least to me. That's just me.
When I was young, my parents really encouraged my brother and I to believe in Santa Claus.
Okay, fair enough.
It was partly
too.
because of our Christian upbringing, and partly that they wanted us to have that magical excitement that surrounds the Christmas holiday for as long as possible.
It was the best.
We would run downstairs to the fireplace on Christmas morning and really tear into the single present left for each of us by Santa, in addition to the gifts from family and friends beneath the tree. The year I stopped believing in Santa Claus was a confusing one.
Why?
And I didn't understand the full ramifications of what had happened for several years afterward. I was still pretty young, about 7 or 8,
Okay.
but fairly old to still be believing in a jolly fat man in a red suit who squeezes down a chimney. Television holiday specials and annual trips to the mall or local church for photos with Kris Kringle were enough to reinforce what my parents had told me. So, 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, except for 2 rambunctious youngsters who were absolutely set on waiting up for Santa.
Yep.
And
Can't
their 2
sleep.
exasperated parents.
Can't sleep.
My brother and I had gotten into the cookie tins, so we were about 10 kinds of wired, and we weren't going to bed until we heard reindeer on the roof. It was going on at about 11:30 at night, very late for us in those days, when bedtime was around 8 p.m. Our parents were on the verge of bribing us with just about anything to get us out of their hair, when we saw a figure in a red and white suit
Bruh.
walk past the living room
Bruh,
window.
hell no.
My little brother, all of 4 years at the time, yelled, "Santa!" and both of us rushed to the front door. We couldn't understand why my mum suddenly grabbed us and hustled us upstairs, or why Dad was quickly locking the door and rushing for the phone while our Siberian husky stood in the entryway and growled. We whined and complained as we were tucked into bed, in our parents' room, oddly enough. But Mum insisted that we'd been very good and waited up for Santa, and now that he was here, it was time for us to go to sleep. It took some doing on her part, but she convinced us that if Santa knew that we were all still up, we might not get any presents, so we had better go to sleep on the double. So
Can't risk
we
it.
burrowed under the covers and squeezed our eyes shut, like all kids pretending to be asleep. In mere minutes, the sugar crash hit, and we fell asleep for real. Just before I drifted off though, I heard my dad come into the room and say something like, "Jerry's here." This was confusing to me, as our neighbour Jerry was a police officer, and I couldn't figure out what the reason he could have been visiting on Christmas for.
Fake Santa, bruh.
But I was too sleepy to puzzle it out, and I didn't hear anything more before visions of sugar plums pulled me under. In the morning, our expected gifts from Santa were on the hearth, and we ripped into our pile of gifts with frenzy. It was a good Christmas that year. Dad had won some money in the state lottery, and it had resulted in some much-needed renovations to our house, as well as a vacation to Disney World, and a whole lot of very nice presents for the family.
Hell yeah.
He had been in a lottery pool with some friends at his
Yeah.
job, and they all received a share of the winnings. It was actually on the local news and everything.
That's awesome.
It didn't dawn on me until much later that neither of my parents looked like they had slept. They were both drinking coffee, which was highly unusual, and they smiled at our antics and thankful hugs, but otherwise, they weren't as energetic as most mornings. For months, I chalked it up to having to wrangle my brother and I the night before.
Not it, brother.
A few months later, a classmate of mine brought in a newspaper article for current events at the school. For those who've never had to sit through it, this involves students bringing in stories from periodicals and fumbling through a 2-minute presentation of the salient points. I usually halfway slept through this part of the day, but not this time. The article was about a man who'd attempted to break into several houses in the week leading up to Christmas holidays. He'd been arrested on Christmas Eve while trying to break into an occupied home dressed as Santa.
That was his house.
And his trial date had just been set for later in the year. As sad as it sounds, that moment was the moment I stopped believing in Santa Claus.
It was his house.
I'd previously thought that the red suit was something of a trademark, and surely only Santa himself
It was
could
his
wear
house,
it.
bro.
But heck,
It was his house.
if any old joker could put on that suit, even one who robbed the houses, then surely, to my young mind, it meant there was no Santa. The pieces didn't fall into place until several years later, when I brought the incident of the very late Christmas Eve up to my mother in conversation. She looked shaken for a minute, but then told me I was probably old enough to know what had actually happened. The man from the newspaper article had been tracking down the people from Dad's lottery pool. He knew they'd all won money, and so would probably have nice new purchases and possibly cash, or even expensive holiday gifts squirreled away in their homes. He'd broken into a couple of my dad's co-workers' houses and made off with jewelry and electronics,
TV.
but he'd never been there when anyone was home. Also, another scary element to this story is that the things he'd stolen, they were sold off for drug money. On Christmas Eve, he'd gotten hopped up on something or other and got into his head to dress up as Santa and to try and hit one more house.
Idiot.
Ours. He'd showed up close to midnight, probably thinking we'd all be in bed,
Idiots.
and he tried to open the front door. Fortunately, my dad managed to throw the deadbolt in time and called our neighbour, who was a police officer and was on duty at the time. His name was Jerry, and he came over right away. Jerry put the guy in handcuffs right there on the front porch and called for backup. The would-be Santa bandit was hauled away while my brother and I slept in our parents' bed
Damn right.
upstairs. I don't know why any thief in his right mind would have tried to enter a house where there were clearly lights on and people awake, especially children. The drugs probably had something to do with it, though I never found out what it was he was on or whether he was carrying any weapons. All I
It's
know
because
is
people don't
that
care,
I'm
bro.
very grateful for my parents being
That's
such
all.
quick thinkers. Otherwise, that year, Christmas may have turned out very differently.
Probably. Listen, people don't
Number
care.
6.
This happened. happened a few
Story
years
3.
ago when
What's
I
going
was still
on?
living in my parents' house. It was a few days before Christmas, and my parents had gone out to visit family for the day.
Okay.
I decided to stay home, relax, and make the most of having the house to myself. And thankfully, my parents were pretty cool about me skipping the visit, as we would get chance to see our family again after Christmas. I settled in for the day, lit the fire in the living room, and chose a few movies and settled down to watch the first one. After the movie finished, I decided to go and make a snack, and it was then, from the kitchen window, that I noticed something strange.
What?
There was an old, battered-looking van parked opposite
hell
my house,
no, bro.
and I could see some men in the
I'm
front
gone.
seat just staring up at my house.
I am gone.
I'm a pretty paranoid person, so alarm bells started to go off in my head straight away. I left the kitchen to go and find the phone, so I could call for help if needed. It was just as I picked up the phone that I heard the back gate rattle. I realized that the men were probably trying to break into the house.
Yes, they were.
And I froze completely. In concept, it is easy to think that you would quickly call the police, but I was so scared, I don't think
You didn't
I
know
even
what to
blinked
do.
for a while. There were 2 back doors to this house. One led into the kitchen,
2?
and the other was a sliding door into the dining room. It was
Wow.
when I heard loud bangs against the kitchen door.
Yeah,
that
dude, they're gonna
I
get
knew
in.
I had to do something.
Listen, that's when you run upstairs and lock yourself in the bathroom. One way in, one way out, and probably a window behind you, but one way in, one way out. That's what
I
you do.
ran into the downstairs bathroom,
Just telling you.
locked the door, and phoned 999. There are men trying to break into my house.
Bathroom,
I'm home
thank
alone
you.
and scared. Please, help. I gave my address, and the operator told me a unit had been dispatched and would be there soon.
No problem, sir.
I
Be
crouched
right
down
there.
behind the door, shaking and trying not to cry. The noise from outside, it stopped. I ventured out of the bathroom when I heard police sirens and let the officers in. The van had gone, and the back door had not been kicked in. I guess the deadbolt on the door held them at bay, and they must have run. They had a good attempt though. The door looked damaged and had to be replaced. Apparently, there had been a number of burglaries in the area recently, and these guys were probably on the lookout for people's Christmas shopping.
Always around the
I
holidays,
guess my
bro.
house looked empty because there were no cars in the driveway. I don't know what they would have done if they had successfully got in and found me
Always.
there, and I don't want to think too much about it. The guys were never caught, and I never saw the van in the area again, which means they're still out there. But I'll never forget how scary that experience was, and I'll never, ever take any chances with home security.
Bruh, hell no. Story number 4.
It
What's
was
going
around
on?
Christmas time when this happened, so our tree was set up in the living room, and the whole house was decorated as well. My brother and I were both in junior high. He was in 9th grade and I was in the 8th. It was nighttime, around 2 or 3 in the morning, when I woke up because
pretty early.
I desperately needed a drink of water.
I hate
So
that.
I quietly left my room and headed to the kitchen. As I turned the corner that opened up into the living room,
The hell is that kid doing?
I saw something incredibly bizarre. Standing in pitch darkness, save for the light coming from the tree, stood my brother in the center of the living room, staring at the Christmas tree.
What the hell is he doing?
His neck was craned backwards,
Oh no,
almost
bro.
painfully, and he was just...
Oh no.
His expression was unreadable, and he didn't acknowledge my presence, nor did he look away though. I noticed he was holding something, and
What is
as
it?
I got closer, I saw he held 3 of the many ornaments that were hanging on the tree.
Okay.
2 decorative glass bulbs and 1 miniature stuffed Santa ornament. I decided that he just couldn't get to sleep and was admiring the tree. Or maybe he'd found the ornaments on the floor and was in the process of putting them back on the tree.
Doesn't sound
So
likely,
I
my
just kept
friend.
walking towards the kitchen. I had my back to him as I filled up a cup of water. So I jumped when I heard a loud crack and some rustling of the tree.
Oh shit.
I quickly looked behind me to see
you
the
fall
tree
into it?
swaying a little bit, and my brother still glued to the same spot, staring upwards. I couldn't figure out what had made that noise, so I watched him, knowing it must have been something he did. And, sure enough, a couple of seconds later, I saw him place one of the ornaments he was holding in his other free hand, and then he violently hurled it towards the tree.
What the hell's wrong with him?
He slowly turned his head towards me, and then just stared
That's
in my
weird,
general
bro.
direction.
That made me
He
uncomfortable.
didn't say anything, he didn't smile or laugh like it was a joke. He didn't move.
He's not joking,
It was
that's
just
why.
eerie. Sinister, even. I was weirded out, and I decided I didn't want to go back past my brother again to
Bro,
get back to my home.
this is weird.
So I made a beeline to the garage and waited out there in one of our unlocked cars for a while with the
Hell
garage
yeah.
lights on until I deemed it safe to head back inside. It was dead silent. I was terrified he was going to pull a prank on me and turn out the garage lights and lock the door to the house so I
don't think he's
couldn't
pranking
get
you, my
back
boy.
inside. But nothing happened. I only waited for about 15 minutes because by now it was very late and I was tired. So I gently opened the car door, walked up the steps to get back inside the house, inched open the door and stepped inside. It took my eyes a minute to adjust to the darkness,
Of course.
but once they did, something sitting on the top of the countertop in the kitchen caught my eye.
Is his
There,
brother?
not a foot away from where I stood, sat the third ornament my brother had been holding.
Okay.
A single, ruby red glass decorative bulb. I kind of just stood there, staring at it for a moment, thinking he was going to pop out at me from somewhere, but he didn't.
So where is
I
he?
peeked around the corner into the living room and saw, to my relief, that my brother, he was gone. He must have gone back downstairs. Nothing else happened that night, but it has stuck with me for a while. What's even weirder though is that my brother doesn't have a history of sleepwalking.
Oh no,
And
bro.
he hadn't done anything like that before.
He's
or
got his
since.
Christmas possession on.
And, of course, he doesn't remember anything.
Wow.
It has always creeped me out that, even while asleep, he followed me, and he was that close to where I hid in the garage.
Oh, hell no, bro. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, though.
The events of the story happened several years ago.
Okay.
During the course of that year, I lived overseas. My company had a branch in Europe, and I decided I would work there for a year or so. For the most part, it was beautiful, and I had a really great time.
That's
Learning
nice.
the culture and meeting new people.
Mm-hmm.
But during the holiday time, especially around Christmas, it could get very lonely and made me homesick.
Okay.
My family and friends still lived back in the United States and could not afford to come see me. And
It's
because of my
understandable.
job, I was stuck in Europe for the time being. On Christmas, I stayed home in my apartment and decided to watch movies. After
What'd you
watching
watch?
Netflix for a couple of hours, I got bored and was looking for something to entertain me for a while.
Like
Quick
what?
backstory about me: when I was in high school, my friends and I used to crack the surface of the so-called dark web, or deep web.
Okay.
We were all pretty computer savvy and thought we were cool being able to access it at a young age. We didn't do anything besides just surf around, as we were scared to stumble across something we shouldn't.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Well, fast forward back to the present, and I haven't done anything like that in close to 10 years. But I decided searching the dark web was just the excitement I was looking for on this
Not on the
quiet
laptop, brother.
Christmas evening.
Without the VPN and all that
It
stuff.
honestly seemed pretty harmless, and I thought, what could go wrong?
A lot.
I searched through dozens of dead-end links and pages, and nothing really seemed to spark my interest. After an hour or so of surfing, I decided it was finally time for bed. I closed everything down on my computer and went
It's a
to the
weird
bathroom.
shower. Weird
When
shower.
I came out, I noticed my webcam screen was up. Being a little naive, I didn't think anything of it and just closed it out. As I turned away, it popped
Spying
up
on you,
again.
bro.
As I stood and watched for several seconds trying to comprehend what was happening, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message from a private number that said, "I see you." Beyond creeped out and starting to get worried,
You got
I
hacked,
decided
buddy.
to shut off my lights and turn the computer off. But before I could, I had an email pop up on my desktop.
Oh, no.
The email was a picture of my apartment building. I unplugged my
bro.
computer and grabbed a knife from my kitchen.
It's over for you,
and
bud.
stood in the corner of my apartment. Almost immediately after unplugging the computer, another text came through that said, "I hope your doors are locked." I couldn't
They are.
comprehend what
Trust
was
me.
happening. I was frozen in both shock
Trust
and
me.
fear. All I could think of was something happened while I was on the dark web, and I
Yep.
wasn't sure what.
They found out who you were,
For
where you
hours,
live.
I stood in my dark apartment staring at the windows and doors. Every little noise made me jump out of my skin. Every time I heard somebody in the hall, I was getting myself ready for self-defense. Now, this was Christmas night and the middle of the night at this point. There was no way there should be that much foot traffic in the hallway, but
I agree.
I heard it. Back and forth, I heard footsteps all night long, but never anybody actually standing in front of or
no.
knocking at my door.
I don't think he just knew. I knew
Morning
he.
finally came, and I still had not slept, and hardly moved all
I think he knew what building, just not what apartment.
night. At about 8:30, somebody knocked on my door. I slowly approached the door, not knowing at all what to expect.
Peephole?
As I looked through the peephole, I noticed it was my neighbor. I opened the door and greeted him. "I hope you had a Merry Christmas," he said to me in an almost excited voice.
I did.
I just nodded and said, "You too." In his cheerful morning voice, he then said, "Somebody dropped this letter off to me this morning and said it was for you.
Oh no.
But they said they couldn't talk to you for some reason."
Huh.
I took the letter, knowing deep down where it truly came from.
You know where it came from, my boy.
I asked, "What did he look like?" And he responded with, "Well, he was actually a she. She was pretty. You know, dark hair, pretty smile." I said thanks and shut the door. Standing right there, I
Dark
opened
web
the letter.
riz?
It was a Christmas card with Santa on the front, and the inside of the card was written as follows. It started with my name, my full name, and then read as followed. "I hope you had a nice Christmas. I am sad you never came out in the hall to meet me and my friends. I guess there's always next year. Happy Christmas."
No.
I left right at that moment.
Yep.
I grabbed the few things I needed and checked into a hotel. I stayed a couple of nights and returned back to the States and told my bosses I was having some sort of medical emergency and that I felt more comfortable finishing out my contract in the States. I never contacted the police and have also never been so scared in my entire life.
Hell yeah.
Every single time I get on the internet, I get a little shaky and only use it for my job and not personal use.
Gotta use a VPN.
Nothing like this has happened to me again in the years since, and thankfully, no follow-ups to this single occurrence. I still can't help but wonder what I strolled upon that night when I was targeted. If I can leave you with a bit of advice,
Be smarter.
don't be a novice strolling around the dark web, especially on Christmas.
Be smarter.
On Christmas Eve of 2015, I was partying on the rooftop of a high-rise building in New York City. There was
Probably
a
cold.
small, I guess you could call it, platform area where chairs and tables had been set up, and all around the rails someone had hung up red and green Christmas lights. There was about 6 of us on the platform drinking and smoking and taking in the view of the city. But with the wind, it was just too cold to stay out there for long.
I was gonna say.
I was just visiting the city with friends, and once I had my fill of the cold, I went back inside and mingled with the people who worked in the office. After another 45 minutes or so, I went back outside to have a cigarette and found myself alone on the platform. I walked to the edge and leaned out over the side, the wind nearly ripping the cigarette out from between my fingers. I turned around and put my elbows on the railing and looked up at the building behind me. It had one of those tall spires with a flashing red light on the top to alert low-flying planes. As I looked at it, I paused, and my cigarette fell from my lips. Something was on the spire. Something alive.
What the hell is that?
Distracted before by the wind and the faint sounds of traffic below, I hadn't heard the sound of something hard tapping against metal. The red glow of the tower light flashed on and off, and I could faintly make out something wrapped around like a snake moving down the spire, and the shine of light reflecting off its body as the scarlet hue illuminated it for a few seconds at a time. I stood stunned and slowly went for my phone to take a video. My body was moving slowly.
These are where the
as if
potato
instinct
cam
was
vids
telling
come
me any
from.
sudden movements would be a mistake. I dug through the pockets in my purse blindly, looking for my phone, not taking my eyes off the thing. It was definitely moving, sliding down the pole like a single droplet of water moving down an icicle. I remember thinking, should I be screaming? As soon as my hand found my cell phone, the thing spread 2 massive bat-like wings. For context, there was a standard-sized American flag hanging vertically on the landing just beneath the spire,
Okay.
where I presumed maintenance people would stand. Each wing was easily twice the size of the flag.
Wow.
I dropped my purse and phone and sprinted back inside the office, catching my foot and falling flat on my face upon the carpet. I felt a whoosh of cold air behind me that hit me hard like a wave on the beach. I started wailing and choking on my own breath, and was convinced at any moment I would hear alarms and would see spotlights combing the city.
It was that cold?
I mean, I couldn't have been the only one to have seen it. This was New York City, one of the most densely populated areas in the country.
Ain't nobody pay attention
I
to New York
screamed
City,
for
bro.
someone to call the cops and started
No one pays
frantically
attention.
changing the channels on the TV, convinced that Anderson Cooper or somebody was going to make a breaking announcement about some creature flying through the skies above New York.
No one pays
But
attention.
there was nothing. A dozen people tried to calm me down, and I sobbed and told them that there had been
Bro's
something
ruining the
outside,
party, bro.
something that had wings. I went into the bathroom and vomited, not because I was worried about the creature, but because everything else happening around me seemed so normal, and no one was reacting. Someone ended up calling an ambulance for me, and the attendants checked me out in the hallway, but I was fine. I wasn't even close to being drunk. I made quite a scene at that party, and I have not been invited back. They call me the Dragon Chick, and no one believes my story. My therapist told me that I should write all this down to reflect upon it, and try to make sense of it. This is the 5th time I have, and nothing is becoming any clearer. Please, someone out there, tell me you've seen it too.
Nope.
I need to know that I'm not crazy.
No, you're probably crazy. People see stuff all the time. It's probably real. Moral of the story is it's probably real. But hopefully you guys did go and enjoy today's video, and if you did, don't forget to smack a like on it. That'd be greatly appreciated. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Christmas special. I know I did. We're going to be doing a ton more of these videos. The new year, I have so many ideas. We're going to take this channel to new heights. So hopefully, as I said, you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, slap a like on it. That'd be greatly appreciated. Comment your thoughts down below. And with all of that being said, my name is Chris, and of course, I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.